The Confederacy of Independent Systems acquired the services of many accomplished tacticians during the Clone Wars, among them Admiral Trench, Commander Mirai, and General Grievous. But Star Wars fans often forget one of the Separatists' greatest commanders, Riff Tamson, the vicious warlord who led Separatist forces in the Battle of Mon Cala. We don't know all that much about Tamson, as he and his people haven't appeared beyond that one Clone Wars arc, but we got a good look at his tactics in the Battle of Mon Cala. So in this video, we're going to give this genius his due.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Is somebody out there? Fishy, 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 come and eat me too. You can't get me, little fishy. Not in here. I'm safe behind my walls.
Riff Tamson was a Carcharodon, a member of a shark-like species from Carcharis in the Nilgard sector. His people were intensely violent, unlike real-world sharks, which are not nearly as aggressive as they're commonly believed to be. Carcharodons were amphibious and could breathe in the open atmosphere just fine, but they preferred to dwell underwater as they were built for swimming and hunting underwater. Their greatest military leaders were primarily experts in aquatic combat, and Riff Tamson was by no means an exception to this rule. Commander Tamson served a bit of a special role in the Separatist military hierarchy, acting both as an ambassador and a conqueror. He actually did a fair bit of negotiating on behalf of the Confederacy, advocating separatism to aquatic species all over the galaxy. Usually, he would act as an ambassador first and then as a commander if negotiations failed. Tamson's goal was to bring as many aquatic worlds as possible under the Confederacy's sway, partly out of loyalty to Count Dooku and partly to further his own agenda. As it turned out, Tamson was a warlord back home on Carcharis, and he had always wanted his people to be a major power in the galaxy. He saw his work for the Confederacy as a way of achieving this. As seen at the end of the Battle of Mon Cala, he would bring other Carcharodons to the planets he conquered, where they would take prominent positions in occupation governments. With this in mind, we speculate that Tamson planned for Carcharis to colonize the worlds he conquered. Tamson's speciality was working on aquatic planets, as warfare on water worlds was obviously much different than ground warfare anywhere else. Planning an underwater battle was tricky for most commanders, but for Tamson, it was almost second nature. This made him invaluable to the Confederacy and an obvious choice for deployment to water worlds like Mon Cala or Manaan. But Tamson was also an excellent commander in his own right, regardless of his innate advantages. He made use of a wide variety of assets and tactics, and if the Battle of Mon Cala is anything to go off, they were highly effective. Judging from his performance at Mon Cala, one of Tamson's greatest strengths as a commander was his reliance on a diversity of assets. As an agent of the Confederacy, he had access to a whole host of Separatist war machines built for underwater combat, ranging from simple aqua battle droids to the deadly Trident-class assault ship. But Tamson didn't rely too heavily on any one of these assets, especially not early on in a given battle. He made extensive use of military assets from Carcharis, including Carcharodon deputies and Hydroid Medusas, rare but nigh unbeatable war machines that Tamson unleashed in swarms. His greatest strength, however, was how he manipulated local allies. During the Clone Wars, the Republic got plenty of mileage out of a tactic the Jedi called the militia model, which involved sending a small unit of clones to a planet to serve as the core of a much larger local militia. The idea was that the clones would train the locals to fight their own battles, meaning the militias they founded could defeat the Separatists more or less on their own. Tamson adopted a similar approach. On Mon Cala, Tamson made extensive use of Quarren Separatist factions to fight his battles for him, establishing an alliance with influential local chieftain Nosor Ree and the remnants of the Quarren Isolation League. But Tamson didn't just use local allies, he built his battle strategies around them. In the opening stages of the Battle of Mon Cala, Tamson made a show of following the Quarren's lead, and even though he was the one calling the shots from behind the scenes, he still made the opening stages of the battle a Quarren-centric affair. It was only in the later stages, when Tamson believed the battle was won, that Nosor Ree and the Quarren were sidelined. Tamson often acquired his local allies through political manipulation, with which he was apparently quite skilled. Political power can be more devastating than even the greatest of armies, and on Mon Cala, Tamson used the divisions and contradictions in local politics as a weapon. He stoked tensions between the Mon Calamari and the Quarren, driving the Quarren further into the Separatist camp, and then sparked a war by assassinating the planet's king. In one fell swoop, he left the Mon Calamari leadership weak and removed the last Mon Calamari political figure the Quarren trusted. Through political manipulation, Tamson drew the battle lines on Mon Cala, pushing different camps in various directions until his side was on top. Only then did he make a bid at conquest. Once all the pieces were in place, Tamson struck fast and hard. He was a big fan of overwhelming force, though he was shrewd enough to keep some of his greatest assets in reserve until battle was underway. He applied constant pressure on his enemies, bringing in new assets as the battle went on to keep them on their back foot. Tamson was an utterly ruthless commander. He didn't care much for the lives of those under his command, and he certainly didn't care for his enemies, whom he treated with the utmost savagery. Tamson tended to lead his armies from the front. This wasn't out of any sense of honor, but bloodlust. On the battlefield, he would attack anything in sight, often ripping enemies apart with his jaws or killing them with explosive knives. Though he was careful about initiating battles, once the fighting began, Tamson put even the Mandalorians to shame in terms of sheer aggression, not letting up until his enemies were soundly defeated. One of Tamson's most devastating tactics, which clearly displayed his ferocity, was the use of Hydroid Medusas. Hydroid Medusas were massive biomechanical war beasts from Carcadon, jellyfish-like creatures with lightsaber-resistant armor and electrified tentacles. They were simple creatures, but they were incredibly dangerous. Tamson often deployed them in swarms, having the beasts rake their tentacles through enemy armies, flash-cooking troops with impunity. On Mon Cala, Tamson used Hydroid Medusas as a means of suppressing his enemies, preventing them from fighting en masse or out in the open. Once the Hydroid Medusas were out in force, all Tamson had to do was hunt down scattered pockets of resistance. Based on the Battle of Mon Cala, he seems to have employed fellow Carcadons for this task, which made sense as his people were excellent hunters. Of course, as we mentioned earlier, his employment of the Carcadons may have served as a double purpose, allowing Tamson to transition from an alliance with local groups to a more colonial relationship. That last part was Tamson's only real weakness. In the Battle of Mon Cala, Tamson took over the planet after the Mon Calamari were apparently defeated, ruling with his Carcadon deputies and turning his allies into second-class citizens. On Mon Cala, this alienated the Quarren, leading them to ally with the Mon Calamari against the Separatists. It's possible that this might have occurred on other worlds as well. Local peoples rarely take kindly to arrogant outsiders claiming sovereignty over their homes, after all. So that's our look at the cunning tactics of Riff Tamson, the not-so-friendly shark man that tried to conquer Mon Cala. But what do you think? Are you a based shark lover or a cringe shark hater? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.